Well, senior Conservative cabinet ministers opposing what many Conservative voters want to see with the UK leaving the ECHR. But before I get to that, just allow me to thank again the new members here on the channel, including Karen and Ray. Thanks for your message, Karen. Thanks for becoming a member. We've got Minbins there commenting on the members only video I did the other day on the Tory wipeout that it looks like is becoming increasingly inevitable. He of the opinion that the Tories just seem to have lost the kind of leadership that many had hoped for when they voted for them. And Caroline there saying, isn't it funny how Rishi Sunak has done everything possible to avoid leaving the ECHR, including getting rid of Suella Braverman as Home Secretary. But now the Tories are tanking. Suddenly Sunak talking about potentially the UK leaving in the future. Now, I did compare yesterday the pretty pathetic response we've seen from the British government on this compared, for instance, to the Swiss People's Party after that absurd ECHR ruling on climate change policy. The biggest party in Switzerland calling for a withdrawal now from the Council of Europe. But when it comes to the UK's response to the ECHR, where we've seen Prime Minister after Prime Minister, whether it be Boris Johnson.
You predicted yourself that there would be all these legal challenges, and true enough, here we're seeing them. Is it not time to come out of the European Convention of Human Rights to be able to set your own rules, to stack the odds in your favour then when these legal challenges come about?
There's certainly the case that the legal fraternity, sorority, whatever, the legal world is very good at picking up ways of trying to stop the government from upholding what we think is a sensible law. And will it be necessary to change some laws to help us as we go along? It may very well be.
All Liz Truss talk a good game on the ECHR.
On your ECHR point, my view is we do need to be prepared to either leave or disregard the ECHR if it is a problem. But the first thing we need to do is address the impact of the Human Rights Act in Britain. I think there's a lot of legislation that when we came into government in 2010, like the Human Rights Act, like the Equality Act, that we should have changed straight away. Because what I don't think we realised enough is that legislation changed the culture in Britain. It changed the way government departments worked. It changed the legal culture. And that has had a very sort of treacleizing effect on getting things done in Britain, including proper deportation of illegal migrants.
Now we're getting much the same from Rishi Sunak. Rather than them actually delivering anything, it's just more talk about what they may or could do in the future.
Would you countenance leaving the ECHR to get Rwanda going?
Look, on this, I've been very clear. I believe that our scheme, including the Rwanda part of it, all our plans to tackle illegal migration. Let me just answer the question, Harry. I believe that our plans are compliant with all our international obligations, including the ECHR. But I believe that border security and controlling illegal migration is more important than our membership of any foreign court.
I was calling to leave the ECHR back in 2022. When I was Home Secretary, I was constantly urging the Prime Minister to take bolder action and go further. He did regularly disagree with me on many of the suggestions that I made to him. My view does still stand that ultimately to regain control of our borders properly and faithfully to the British people, we do need to ultimately leave the European Convention on Human Rights. We do that via Article 58 of the Convention. We have to give 6 months' notice to the Council of Europe, and then we're able to take back control of our laws, take back control of our borders, design a new domestic human rights framework that properly reflects the needs of the British people, but also enables us not to be dictated by a foreign court in Strasbourg.
You know him. Do you think Mr Sunak would ever do it? Leave the ECHR?
Well, judging from my conversations with him, he never agreed with me on the proposition that I just set out now.
I mean, what on earth are they waiting for? Perhaps they should listen to the Conservative MP and former Home Office Minister Sarah Dines, who has argued very clearly that we must leave the ECHR, and her advice to the government clear. They've got to solve the problem now. There should be a simple piece of emergency legislation giving notice of withdrawal from the ECHR. Others now noting the European Court has become a monster. And you've got Alex Burghart, the latest there, a minister there, saying this is a deeply troubling judgment by the ECHR, that the court has extended its remit, created a new right and established new duties. The court, assuming for itself powers that have always belonged to free states and their citizens, and doing so without a mandate from those citizens. And ultimately, it leaves citizens with only two options, except that the policy of elected governments can be forced by the ECHR in whichever way it chooses, or leave the ECHR. It's a pretty easy decision as far as I'm concerned. But of course, you've got a Conservative parliamentary party that sort of seem to be very proud of the fact that they're a broad church. Well, actually, I think being an ideological broad church is a massive weakness. It's been shown to be a massive weakness for the government, because rather than actually just getting on delivering a cohesive agenda, they just have internal discussions and bickering constantly. And in the end, nothing happens. You've got, for instance, the One Nation Conservatives have come out very strongly against leaving the ECHR, despite the fact that when it comes to voters who backed the Tories at the last election, many more want to leave the ECHR than want to remain. But it seems an ECHR exit could be blocked by Conservative ministers, because you're seeing now these reports that everyone from the Chancellor to the Home Secretary to the Justice Secretary all oppose leaving the ECHR. The Times are reporting there that at least 12 ministers who attend Cabinet would oppose leaving the ECHR, around double the number who would be in favour of leaving. And interesting to note this from a Cabinet Minister now, that effectively the EU deal being used against us in this way, the threat that if we were to leave the ECHR, well, then the EU would look to terminate the deal. Well, I suspect many of you will be saying no deal, it is them. You should also note that we've seen the EU actually continuing to interfere when it comes to UK policy. They're issuing private warnings against our government attempting to bypass the ECHR. Of course, this then means with Reform UK standing in every seat in England, Scotland and Wales at the next general election, they can very much make clear that they're the only party of leave when it comes to the ECHR. And you've got Richard Tice hitting out of this recent ruling, this recent decision, describing it as a shocking decision, and that it reconfirms we must leave this foreign dictatorial court, saying only reform will protect British interests, only reform will leave the ECHR. And Tice also pointing out that the Tories are bottling the ECHR again, and that only reform would leave the appalling ECHR. So it seems, despite the consensus really from Conservative voters, it's Tories in their broad church in Westminster who are going to oppose and seemingly block the UK from leaving. Let me know what you make of that in the comments below, please, guys. I will, of course, keep bringing you all the latest on this and more. So please do whack this video a quick thumbs up. And of course, as ever, cheers for watching.